He was, well, perfect. Others might not have thought so, but it is a well-known fact that the human race isn't full of smart people. Everything about him was incredible. His gray eyes, his short, spiky blonde hair he sometimes hid under a green hat, the shirt he always seemed to be wearing, the amazing way he smelled. I only knew the way he smelled because of the jacket I had stolen from him. One day, he sat in front of me on the bus, immersed in the Game Boy he had brought with him. I saw my chance and slid it off the seat and over my shoulder as I walked by. Oh, his smell. Every night I fell asleep, wrapped in his jacket, the sleeves pressed against my nose. Almost as amazing as his voice. Every word he spoke made my breath leave my body, my knees go weak, and the world stop. And that sexy accent of his, like nothing I had ever heard before. The first time I saw him was on the bus. My car had broken down and would be in the shop for at least a week, so I had to start taking the bus to work. I was reading the newspaper. Another 2 murders that week. The first body found was a young male, 22 years old. His throat was crushed, which is why he was unable to yell for help. His knees and arms were broken. He had tried to crawl out of the alley while being slashed by a rather large blade. His body had 64 cuts on it. Some short, some long, some shallow, some deep. The last cut was the one that had ended his life. His head had been pulled forward and his throat slit. It had been raining that night, and the dark pools of water hid how much blood there really had been. The newspapers didn't say all of this, of course, but I knew just the same. The same night, on the other side of the city, a young female had been killed. Her death had been more artistic. She had been dressed in an elaborate Gothic evening gown and Victorian shoes. Stunning makeup had been expertly applied, with ice-white skin and poison apple-red lips. She looked like a doll. All lights had been broken, excluding the one above her. The perfect spotlight. She had been strung up with a rope around her neck. Elastic cords had been tied to her wrists and ankles, then attached to the light post. This had given her a puppet-like appearance as she dangled in the night air. In fact, the group of teenagers who had stumbled upon her body had thought she had been some sort of artistic prank. They only realized she was dead when one of them had touched her to see what sort of material she was made out of. The newspaper said that when the teenager realized she was a corpse and not a prop, he had fainted. Anyways, back to my angel. He was sitting as far from everyone else as he could, backpack slumped beside him, attention completely on his Game Boy. He looked so breathtaking. I purposely missed my stop, just so I could see where he was going. As I expected, he got off at the university stop. I didn't want him to notice me just yet, so I let him go. For the next few weeks, I followed him, getting up earlier and earlier to check the bus stops to see where he got on. Step by step, I managed to work my way back to his house. He lived in a small house with a few roommates, but luckily, he had his own room. During the day, when they had all left for school or work, I slipped in through a window with a broken lock. From his calendar, I learned his class schedule, and soon had his weekly schedule memorized. Every week became the same routine for me. I would get on the bus the stop before his, trembling with anticipation. By that time, I could determine where he would sit, and I would watch him from the corner of my eye, from only a few seats away. Normally, I would pretend to read the newspaper, even though it always seemed to be the same stories. 2 murders every 2 weeks. Males always slashed to death. Females always set up in an elaborate artistic pose. He would play on his Game Boy or finish up some last-minute homework. I had bought a backpack so I could pretend I was going to the same university as him. As he stepped off the bus and onto the sidewalk, I followed close behind him, barely able to keep myself from reaching out to touch him. Once, I purposely tripped and fell off the bus. He caught me, just as I knew my angel would. His arms wrapped tight around my body. As he helped me stand, he spoke for the first time.
Whoa, careful. You alright?
I couldn't breathe, so I just nodded. After making sure I was stable, he adjusted his backpack and walked away with a small wave. I have no idea how long I stood there, my skin tingling where he had touched me. Eventually, I got back onto the bus and went home. I collapsed onto my bed, giggled like a schoolgirl, wrapped myself in his jacket, and spent the rest of the day fading in and out of fantasies. Things were going really well for a while. He started to notice me and would even smile at me from time to time. His adorable little half smile, it made me melt every time I saw it. Then, one day, my happiness was ripped away from me. We had gotten off the bus, and a girl ran up to him. That fucking little tramp. She kept giving him wide puppy dog eyes and giggled every time he spoke. What did that fucking bitch think she was doing, flirting with my angel? My angel! I decided then and there that I had to move my plans forward immediately. I took some time off work and spent the next week getting my house prepared. When that was done, I spent every night waiting for the opportunity to put my plans into motion. Occasionally, my angel would go shopping late at night, so I waited for him. Night after night, I stood as far away from his house as I could, while still being able to see his front door. The cool air chilled my skin, but I didn't notice. All of my focus was on him. After what seemed like an eternity, the night I had been waiting for finally arrived. My angel left his house, and I dashed for the bus stop before the one he would use. The bus was almost empty. I sat where I knew my angel would sit. I messed up my hair a little and tried to look as upset as possible. When he got on the bus, he sat exactly where I knew he would. I started to cry lightly under my breath. I looked around wildly every time the bus stopped, and closed them tight every time it continued moving. After a few minutes, he stood and walked over to me.
Hey, I know you, don't I? We go to the same university, right? You alright?
I trailed off, unable to speak. I couldn't believe my plan was working. My angel was talking to me. I was trying so hard to speak. I had a whole speech planned out, but his closeness took the words away from me. It seemed to work in my favor, though. I could see him debating with himself for a minute. Then he sat in the seat next to mine and wrapped his arms around me. My heart started to pound. He felt so warm, smelled so good. He was so perfect.
It'll be alright. Tell me, what's wrong?
He whispered to me, trying to calm me. I took a deep breath and was finally able to speak. My ex, he won't leave me alone. I think he's been following me home at night. I'm so scared. I think he's going to hurt me. I called the cops, but they won't help me. I don't want to walk home alone. He's out there somewhere, waiting for me. I know he is. And all of these murders on top of it. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I started sobbing quietly and hid my face. Against his chest. My angel wrapped his arms around me even tighter.
I'll walk you home if you want. He'll be alright. I'll make sure you get home safely, okay? He'll be alright.
He held me and whispered comforting words as he gently rocked me. I pretended to calm down, and when it came to my stop, we got off. He slung his backpack over his shoulder, wrapped an arm around me, and continued to hold me as we walked down the dark street in silence. Every once in a while, I would stop, as if I had heard a noise, and look around frightened. He would wrap his arms tighter around me, comfort me, and gently urge me to continue walking. Eventually, we made it to my house. With shaking hands, I unlocked my door, pushed it open, and stepped inside as I flicked the light switch, allowing the glow to fill the darkness. You don't think he was able to break in while I was gone, do you? I whispered.
You stay here and I'll check.
My angel assured me as he stepped into the house. I closed the door and locked it behind us. My angel went from room to room, flipping the lights and checking the windows to make sure they were still locked. I hurried to the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of bourbon. When my angel finally finished checking the main part of my house for dangers, he joined me.
Alright, all clear.
Thank you so much for all your help. Here, please stay a few minutes and have a drink with me. It's the least I could do. I handed him a glass and took a long sip from my own. He grinned his little half grin at me and took a long drink. I downed my whole glass, and he did the same. Triumphantly, I set my empty glass down and grinned at him. Confusion spread over his face as I took the glass from his hand and quickly set it on the counter. I did what I could to keep my angel from hitting his head as he collapsed to the floor. After several hours, my angel finally woke, slowly making his way through the grogginess. Happily, I watched him for a few minutes. His chest rose and fell. His breath started to grow faster, but not too fast. I wanted to touch him so bad. Rub my face along his chest, my fingernails down his back. But there would be plenty of time for that later. I watched as his gorgeous gray eyes finally focused, and he was able to look around the small room. The walls were plain, a pleasant blue-gray color, almost the same color as my angel's eyes. He laid on a basic king-sized bed with black silk sheets. I curled on a black leather chair at the foot of the bed. A small table set out of my angel's reach stood near the chair. Several knives, sharpened to a razor's edge, rested on it. A thick chain ran from the wall above the bed to a small bathroom and into the wall on the other side of the shower. My angel was wearing custom-made handcuffs he would never be able to escape from. There was a ring in the middle of the chain that connected the cuffs, which allowed him to slide along the chain that stretched across the 2 rooms. My angel stared at me, his eyes cold as the sky after a snowstorm. When I had his full attention, I spoke softly to him. This room is completely soundproof, and the chain is cemented into the wall. Pull all you want, they are not coming out. The handcuffs are specially made, as you can tell. You will only hurt yourself if you try to slip out of them. This is your new home. I will bring you everything you need, and the more you behave, the more comforts I will bring you. Misbehave, and I will slice you up. Everything in this room was built keeping you in mind. There is nothing you will be able to do to escape. And with time, my angel, you won't want to escape. You will see this is where you belong. Here with me, forever. Smiling, I walked over to him and gave him a gentle kiss. I need to leave for a while. If you work at your gag, you should be able to loosen it. I'll bring you food when I get back. Yell all you want. Like I said, this room is completely soundproof. Over the next few weeks, I spent all of my free time with my angel. He behaved himself perfectly, so I gave him a TV and several video games to occupy his time. We started playing the video games together, laughing and talking as if we had been old friends. As time went on, he seemed to grow rather accustomed to his new home and life, flashing his half-grin more and more. Sometimes he even flirted with me. Our time together was everything I hoped it would be. Every week I read the newspaper, searching for updates on my angel's disappearance. The few people who had been on the bus didn't pay attention to us, or if they did, didn't approach the police about it. The last people to admit seeing him alive were his roommates. The bi-weekly murders had stopped after his disappearance, so for a while the police suspected him. But my angel's family and friends were able to provide alibis for him for several of the murders. After that, the theory was that he was the last victim, able to stop the killer permanently, but unable to escape with his life. Even though there was no proof of this being the case, several people started to see my angel as a hero. I laughed to myself. They would never know how right they were. After a while, I let my thoughts fade away, tossed the newspaper onto the table, and stretched out on the bed with my angel. He noticed I was watching him and parted his lips as if to speak, but changed his mind and returned his attention to the video game he was playing. "What is it?" I asked as I ran my fingertips along his arm.
How long have I been here?
He asked timidly. "About 2 weeks," I answered without hesitation.
I've behaved myself, right?
He asked hopefully. "Yes, my angel, you have behaved very well. Why do you ask?" I purred, attempting to reassure him. He hesitated for a moment before asking his next question.
Can I grab my backpack?
I looked around and saw a backpack lying against the far wall. I had placed it there the night I clipped my angel's wings. After being focused on my angel for so long, I had completely forgotten about it. Oh, sure. Oh, sure, I said as I got up to retrieve it. As I set it on the bed beside him, I grabbed his controller and started to play his game as he unzipped his backpack and rummaged through it. I had gotten too comfortable with him. After 2 months of him being perfectly obedient, being my angel, I never thought to check his backpack before giving it to him. He pulled a rope from deep inside and wrapped it tightly around my neck. Shocked, I struggled and kicked, desperate for air. I slid off the bed and pulled him halfway down with me. He was knocked off balance and was enough for me to struggle free. I ran towards the table with the knives on it, but after only a few steps, my angel grabbed my leg and I fell, hitting it instead. Knives slid onto the floor and newspapers flew into the air and scattered everywhere. My angel's foot had gotten tangled in the strap of his backpack, and when he tried to tackle me, he fell. The contents of his backpack slid onto the wooden floor and scattered everywhere. Jars of death white cream, tubes of blood red lipstick, various jars of creams, liquids, and powders, along with ropes, knives, and tape. My mind raced. He couldn't be. My angel tried to stand, struggled to kick his foot free from the straps that trapped him. Just as he freed himself, one of his hands slipped on the newspaper. When he glanced at it, the headline that announced the end of the murders caught his attention. He looked up towards me, a knife in each hand, my stance professional, leaving no doubt that I knew how to use them and use them well. I watched his thoughts pass across his eyes. When realization filled them, he growled deep in his throat. Pleasure rolled down my body. The vibration of his growl filled me. In a low, deep voice that made me shiver once more, he asked,
"Why always 64 cuts?"
I shrugged. It's my favorite number. A growl escaped his lips once more as he charged and slammed me against a wall. He grabbed me, put pressure in just the right spots, and forced me to drop my knives. I tried to let out a scream of frustration, but it was muffled by his mouth pressed hard against mine. My angel was kissing me, pressed his body against mine, and wrapped himself around me. I melted and fell into an oblivion of madness and pleasure. Now, my angel and I never leave each other's sides. We travel from city to city, leaving behind beautiful works of art. He sets up the scene, and I paint it red. The world is our playground, our paradise, for I am his angel of blood, and he is my angel of death.